We're going to lead it to order. It's Monday, September the 13th at 7:30. And first of all, I would like to change the agenda. We have a guest tonight, and let Adam be number one and just let the rest come down in order. Do I hear a motion to amend?
I make a motion to amend.
Do I hear a second?
I'll
Any
second.
discussion? Did you get that? All in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. Okay, Adam, if you would like to come up, and I'll tell you a little bit about Adam. You know, we've been speaking over the telephone, so. And Adam, he's a program analyst at North Carolina Pandemic Recovery Office. Acronym NCPRO. He states, they're more official that oversees and coordinates the physical response to COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to overseeing the distribution of $3.6 billion in COVID relief funds, NCPR played various roles in the flow of more than $8.8 billion coronavirus state and local physical recovery funds throughout North Carolina. Adam has 8 years' experience in grant writing. Administrative include rural county school districts, city government, higher education, and before his roles in grant management, Adam was a news reporter, daily newspaper for 7 years in North Carolina. Adam, it's yours.
Thank you, Mayor Kirby and hello, commissioners. I hope it's fine to take my mask off if I'm standing this far away. Put it back on if you want me to, but I'm going to talk for a few minutes. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay. I brought a PowerPoint presentation printed out, so we have enough for the mayor and commissioners and can make copies available to whomever might want one if you do. But yes, the sheet there with the NC Pro logo and the local fiscal recovery funds title. So as we need to get you one. Sorry, yep, that's it, yep. I'm working from home like a lot of folks, and I had a printer issue, so Office Depot has helped us out today, and I had to run through that on my way here. But yes, thank you for your time. I'll just take about 10 or 15 minutes to describe the American Rescue Plan Act's appropriation of local fiscal recovery funds, which are available to local governments throughout the state and nation for that matter, but we're obviously concerned with Varnumtown and North Carolina here. Go over some of the basics, what our office does, what the funding can be used for, and kind of the context for how you can use the funds, and then available for any questions you might have. And I'll go ahead and point out on the very back is my phone number and email address. So if you wanted to make one note there, we have a general email address that is similar to mine. It's just ncpro@ and then that same osbm.nc.gov. So ncpro, those letters, @osbm.nc.gov. That's another email address that kind of our entire office can see and answer some detailed questions if you have them. And again, happy for you to contact me as well. But yes, my name's Adam Scholl. I'm a program analyst with NC Pro. I've been there so long, since May. I had grant work going back 7 or 8 years in communities, public school district, city government, higher education, including some experience in Western Kentucky in a rural community. So felt I was really interested in this work because I've worked in a lot of communities in Western Kentucky and smaller areas in North Carolina, and kind of interested in these funding opportunities for local governments through these funds. Wanted to start with just kind of giving a general overview of the office, kind of what is NC Pros. Some folks, since it's a new office, kind of just like to share that very briefly. Our office was established under a session law, so we kind of know of our future as state lawmakers let us know about it. And our mission, kind of overall purpose, is to oversee and coordinate all COVID-19 relief efforts administered by the governor's office. We're a point of contact for the state's pandemic recovery efforts, particularly economic recovery, and we try to help guide that plan for the state. And we provide technical assistance, kind of like this, talking to local governments and ensure there's some coordination of all this federal money coming into the state and how it can be used, eligible ways, that sort of thing. As far as the state's concerned and a path forward out of the pandemic, which is still with us, even since March 2020, relief, recovery, and resilience are kind of the three main talking points and the main objectives. Relief meaning that short-term response effort initiated by the government and other entities, mostly from March 2020 when it started to December. So those are the coronavirus relief funds, which you might have heard about, the CRF, they're commonly referred to as well. That funding is still out there. It was appropriated again in early 2020. Works in some different ways than the funding I'm here to talk to you about. And that was one thing I wanted to make sure to discuss. CRF had some specific uses and worked a little differently, all to kind of as a response to the pandemic, but just some different nuances that are important. The spending deadline for those funds was originally December 2020. It was pushed back to December 2021. So some of that funding, like I said, is still out there, but we're kind of transitioning from that and those funds being spent down to now what we're talking about tonight with the American Rescue Plan Act, which is more of a kind of a recovery, medium-term response to the pandemic. The American Rescue Plan Act appropriates state and local fiscal recovery funds. So you'll hear, if you've read in the news or hear it talked about, it's everything from SLFRF to local FRF, state FRF, but it's all kind of a blanket term for these American Rescue Plan Act appropriations of state and local fiscal recovery funds. Mouthful. So we'll dive into that in just a moment, but that other piece, the resilience, is kind of the long-term policy and response efforts initiated by government and other entities to address systemic economic challenges throughout the state. So it's kind of the three areas we kind of simultaneously work under right now with NCPRO. I mentioned those, the first round of federal relief, the coronavirus relief funds. So I just included a few bullet points. I won't go through them all or read it all to you, but nationally that was $46.2 billion made in 4 broad appropriations, again, just as a response to the pandemic. And that sheet there in front of you with the $46.2 billion, that's what has a spending deadline at the end of this year. So this is kind of waning out now. The next page is slide 5. That's actually a screenshot from our website. Just if you would have an interest ever in kind of a dynamic tool on our website to see the counties throughout North Carolina, what funding has been appropriated, what are some of the ways they use that funding, what are the different programs at the state level that's all geared toward recovery from the pandemic. That's kind of all there in one dynamic tool that updates in real time. So we hope as our plan is, as the local fiscal recovery funds are used by local governments throughout the state, they'll be added into this map so you can kind of see what's being spent where and in what ways it's being used. So to focus on the local fiscal recovery funds, again, just so you have the details there on slide 6, that is the 2 main appropriations and laws that were signed into effect that create this funding. So the first there is, I like to mention that one about emergency rental assistance. It was enacted December 27th, 2020. It's $4.7 billion in federal relief, so some of that come to North Carolina, and that's in effect now. Kind of lumping under 2021 since it was so late in 2020. But that program is ongoing. And March 11th is when the President signed the American Rescue Plan Act, creating $29.8 billion in federal relief, and that's the state and local fiscal recovery funds. Slide 7 breaks down the funding for North Carolina, so we're starting to get more specific to us here. That shows, and for those in the back, if you get a copy, this just breaks down the state and local fiscal recovery funds coming to our state. Where is it going? So you can think about it in 4 broad places. You have the state fiscal recovery funds, which is a very similar but distinct pot of money, different from what local governments get, because it's a state level. So that pot of money alone by itself is a little more than $5.4 billion. So the governor has released a plan for those funds. It's a tentative plan. It requires some action by the General Assembly to become law, and that's kind of an ongoing process right now. So we don't know exactly what those programs and how much money are going to be in each program. That's being decided now. What works differently are the local fiscal recovery funds. So those are those other 3 categories. I'll go by size here, but the more than $2 billion goes directly from the U.S. Treasury to all 100 counties in North Carolina. So each combined, they all receive a little more than $2 billion, and that's a direct relationship. The county is requesting the funds from Treasury, they're given straight to the counties from Treasury. Yes, sir.
I got a question.
Okay.
We don't need to hear all them numbers. How can this town get any yet or use it yet?
Okay. Hey, we'll get there. And
You
to get
the
there,
cart before the horse. We need to listen to all them numbers if we can't have something to do with it or get some of it.
you're right. So I'll focus on the local part. And the last thing I'll say that's a big number is that local governments throughout the state are getting $705 million dispersed throughout the state. Now, to get that to each local government, like you said, is a process that requires local governments to request that via NC programs. That's kind of why I'm here and why the one reason the office exists. For Varnumtown to receive these funds, we have a pre-contracting checklist. So that would have to be submitted, and that acts as requesting the funds. So to your question, what can we use it on? That slide 8, the very next one, covers the eligible uses. You can think about it in 4 broad categories. So that's laid out there, with the first being COVID response and adaptation. And something helpful to figure out what can we use the funds on in almost every instance is it somehow helping people or an industry or a part of your community that was impacted by the pandemic. And especially so if they were disproportionately impacted, meaning something about the business or the household or the resident made them more vulnerable to the disease itself or the negative economic impacts. So that's that first category. The categories 2 through 4 for smaller towns, it applies, but I was wanting to address some of that too, because something like premium pay is what you can think of as premium pay to those essential workers, those who have had to be out in the field, interacting with the public day to day, handling things that other people handle. Those sorts of jobs are eligible for premium pay. But again, some city staffs are large, and they have a lot of workers who are doing that kind of thing. Some towns may not have one full-time staff member, and so in that way, it just looks different depending on your local context. Same with revenue loss, which is that third category. This funding is allowed to make up for some of that revenue loss, and there's more eligible uses if you're claiming revenue loss. Again, that would apply to cities and counties that might have experienced a lot of that due to the pandemic, a lot of revenue loss. If that's not the case for you in your local context, it might not apply to you as much as some of the other areas. And then infrastructure investments is a large focus of the funding. Again, those tend to be large projects, but it's water, sewer, and broadband are the 3 large projects within infrastructure. If there's any experience in the Clean Water and Drinking Water State revolving loan funds, a lot of the same kind of projects will be eligible in both of those. So that's kind of like a really broad view of what you can use these funds on, and you're free to kind of investigate and choose whatever as a local government you see fit. Just through experience and talking to different sized governments is why I kind of looked at some of those COVID response and adaptation uses as being helpful in local towns that aren't as large as, say, a Greensboro or something like that. It's just how you can use the funds most effectively. Any questions or anything I can explain further up to
Well,
now?
last month when we talked, we couldn't find a use for it.
Uh-huh.
And so we were needing funds to do something about the drainage ditches. We've got a drainage problem, especially with storms. But at that time, I don't think everything was set in stone, and there was a possibility that might change. So do you know if the infrastructure can include, digging ditches and drainage repair and that kind of thing?
So as far as, has anything changed in the guidance, the interim
For the use?
right, the interim final rule is still interim. The Treasury has not come out with the final rule. I don't know when that'll happen. I hope soon, just so we know we have. I don't think we'll have large shifts in the eligible uses. I don't expect that. Of course, that's just me talking. When asked about a specific use like that may not be just spelled out in the guidance already, I will say what's helpful in determining the use of these funds is looking at it through that lens of is it helping a population or part of your economy that was impacted by the pandemic, especially disproportionately impacted. That is, so there's just a shift in how that's done. I've had a lot of questions about town halls, and this is just kind of hypothetical to help you think how we think through it. I've had a lot of questions about town halls. We were planning on renovating this part of our town hall already. Can we use these funds for that? An eligible use is upgrades to any public facility that allows maybe greater spacing or updates the HVAC unit and replaces HEPA filters, all because those aid in responding to the pandemic. So in general, can you upgrade a town hall? That's not spelled out explicitly, but what is are certain upgrades if they respond to the pandemic. And in the context of like drainage or having issues there, I would start to ask, well, where are those issues at? Are they impacting business in your town that's already been impacted by the pandemic? Start to think of it that way. But to be direct and try to answer your question, drainage as an explicit use in the interim final rule, I don't read that. But yeah, I hope that helps. It's kind of
Yeah, it's basically what I was told last month. It's, the impact is basically on the residents, not necessarily business.
What about the moisture under the building? Is that all under control now?
It's not
One
getting
day we
covered.
had moisture problems
Does
and
it have to be due to COVID, pandemic?
and I don't know exactly what.
He's talking about we have
that moisture down
under
there,
the building.
we have mold and mildew.
That was taken care of several years ago.
Has that already been taken care of? Okay, I didn't know if we were still having those problems or not.
Okay. That is the general framework. Kind of had to say that to communities across the state where it's kind of what's the project going toward, sometimes that you can think through. I did include some slides, and we don't have to go through all of them, but the qualified census tracts are an area within the guidance that have more wide-ranging eligible uses. There are qualified census tracts close to Varnumtown, included a kind of a screenshot of what those look like from overhead. not being an expert on city boundaries and qualified census tract boundaries, we'd have to look closer to see if any of those overlap at all with the city limits. But just so you know, qualified census tracts are areas where there's already a documented need. HUD actually designates those census tracts, and they're an indication of, I put down the specific numbers, but they're areas where 50% or more of the households have incomes below 60% of the area median income. Basically meaning there's already documented need. So any services provided with these funds, any projects done in QCTs are already presumed eligible by the federal government since there's already documented need. Again, it has to be offered either within that census tract boundary or to residents who live in the qualified census tract. So if you have a program and the funding uses really do kind of expand, but if you do an affordable housing development project in the QCT, it's eligible. If you provide services to the families who live in those QCTs and maybe this happens to be close by the QCT, that's eligible too. But don't mean to get down to the weeds, that's just something to be aware of when thinking through all the uses of these funds.
What about some of these homes that need to be updated, modernized, like plumbing, heating, cooling, septic?
Yeah, again, housing assistance is listed as an eligible use. Within that lens, again, of is it a program set up that is available to those impacted by the pandemic, and especially those disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. So in low-income areas, in areas of need, within populations of need, or who were vulnerable to the pandemic in ways that maybe the general population wasn't. That's how I would think about that. And with any, like, if you come up with a very specific program or a question you'd like us to really look at, that's why I mentioned that NC Pro at osbm.nc.gov. We have our staff that deals with reporting and guidance daily. We work on these issues. We have a general counsel at the state level. We can kind of really review things, and NC Pro can't certify or stamp any project and just say with absolute confidence that Treasury will find it an eligible use unless it's just very clear in the guidance. But that's an important point I wanted to touch on too. In addition to eligible uses of the funds, it's just important to know that the way this has been set up, the U.S. Treasury is who the local governments report to. So the state, in this instance, with local fiscal recovery funds, is able to provide technical assistance and help you think through things and work with you in any way that would be helpful. The reporting relationship is between the local government and Treasury. So when you're thinking ultimately how do we decide if this is eligible or not, you need to feel comfortable reporting to Treasury that it's an eligible use. And the reporting requirements in towns of 50,000 or less are called non-entitlement units. So you'll hear NEUs a lot, NEUs submit a yearly report October 31st. And the funds, just to help again think about eligible uses, the deadline for the funding is December 31st, 2024 to encumber funds. So by that date, you need to have either spent or encumbered those funds for a specific purpose. And then the absolute final deadline on all expenditures and projects is December 31st, 2026. So longer than coronavirus relief funds. A little longer time span to think about how you might use these. And I had a question before I wanted to answer too, as far as some communities have found it beneficial to work together on projects. That's different throughout the state, different throughout regions, but it is an eligible use to transfer funds or do projects jointly with other towns or a county, so that, just so you know. I know that's different wherever you go, but it is an eligible use. So.
Has some towns applied?
For the funding, yes, so there are 525 NEUs, that acronym again, but the 525 towns and cities throughout the state that are been appropriated funds, and all but 11 have accepted them or requested them.
I mean, in Brunswick County,
I believe, I was gonna double check this, I believe every NEU has accepted the funds, except for Varnum-Town. And it's not that you haven't accepted them, it's just haven't gone through the process yet.
all the times in Brunswick County is applied except voting time, is that what you say?
How were they gonna use it? Just a sample?
I don't know right off the top of my head. Now, the reporting on this is kind of where you would see that as a public record. Because really from the state, we don't have to know at this point, or the state is in our role. But if that were a question, then it's a matter of public record when you report on it. But
You don't have no idea what some of the times is applied for that we might judge by?
not at this time. There has been a lot of advice to towns to not be in a big rush to spend all the funds and pin down exactly what you might do because of that timeline. Again, you've got 3 to 5 years to spend the funds. So this is a time to kind of plan amongst yourselves, plan with the community. There's opportunity for that.
You say they've already given them the funds?
Well, that is
That time spent, not spent it on.
Well, that has happened. We've updated our website weekly since I think June or July. So I don't know the latest total, but yes, a lot of the funds have begun to transfer already, and a lot of the towns already have those.
Okay, so we have 3 to 5 years.
To spend it.
What if there's something changing in Varnum-Town, say 2 years from now, you say, hey, maybe we can use these funds for that project or whatever.
You have until those deadlines are the deadlines. So there's no requirement that they be spent in any other time than that.
But when do you have to apply for a deadline?
Okay,
That's your question.
yes, the decision now, the state was facing a deadline from Treasury on dispersing those funds, because the state is essentially like a banker in this role. So Treasury gives the money to us, and we have deadlines to get it to local governments. So that's kind of been going on throughout the summer, more or less. Actually, the 15th of this month, so what's that, Wednesday?
Yeah.
Is when is when the state has requested kind of that decision to accept or decline or whatever you might do. So that is,
It's got to be something that has been affected by the pandemic.
in general, yes. Yeah.
Is it right that we heard that Shalot started the process and then backed out of it?
Shalot, I would double check. It's off the top of my head, I wouldn't want to tell you wrong. Off of memory, I don't know of that, but I can check for you.
I do know that Shalot and other towns are getting together about this, talking about it again.
Because it's an arduous process and then you get the money, you can't use it, so it has to revert back. And you're going through a lot of work.
Yeah, it's important. There are a lot of important questions that kind of when anyone asks, well, can we use this? I mean, local governments can always use
But
money.
even in a broad sense, it's got to be COVID related, and I know that's broad, because you can, but that's where it stops us.
Okay, yeah, it is a local decision. That's how this was set up, and it's how it's meant to be. So I just try to, just share what eligible uses are and answer any questions, but.
If we could get that money and spend it like we wanted to, we'd take it tomorrow.
How much money do you think Varnum time to get? That's a question.
Okay, that's an important point. So there's, released for every town is the total maximum appropriation. And I can get into the details of how that was calculated, but what
Is it
that,
based on population, valuation, or what?
population is the major characteristic. And it's just under $190,000 is the total maximum appropriation of Varnum-Town. Treasury put in a calculation, so that is not necessarily what Varnum-Town might get. It's 75% of a specific operating budget figure. So take a good way to think of it is your adopted budget figure for fiscal year 20, so the one you adopted July 1, 2019, that operating budget figure, 75% of that figure. That would be what the total appropriation is, and then take that figure, and there are two disbursements. So it's roughly half. You'd get that within weeks, and you would get the second disbursement about a year later.
Well, looks like our budget was about 260,000 plus or minus.
So that would be like 75% of that. We'd be
Yes.
able to, like 75% of that number.
Yes.
But I haven't heard much what it could be used for from him.
Well,
There's a picture here on this, just, it's got purple color, but it barely does touch burning time.
And again,
On
that
page
is, right, and that is just qualified census tracts, which I highlight because there's some unique uses.
What was the purple one?
The qualified census tract, that's a census tract that has a documented need. So that is just to let you know that
That's
there's,
the area that could use it?
it's applicable in any area. They're just specific, unique uses in those shaded areas. But the area you may want to,
That barely touches burning time, but we come to the river.
the area of funding that I would really draw your attention to is that column 1, where it talks about responding to public health emergency. That's number 8, so that's slide 8 there. I think one more. Yeah, that's it. So that column 1, where it says assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits. Aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. And allowable uses under that category are public health measures. Again, it is broad, but anything that allows for public gathering in a more safe way or a way that's sensitive to the pandemic. Direct economic assistance to small businesses, households, and nonprofits. There's some uses for behavioral health, and then and supporting disproportionately impacted populations by the pandemic. And it's not that these are all the eligible uses, but that first column is what is applicable to governments kind of the size of Arlington. Yes, sir.
If we applied for it, and then we've got that kind of money sitting there, we've got that 3-year period to figure out if there is a project and go through the specific application process for said project, right?
Right. This is federal funding that I say your acceptance of the funds is that pre-application or pre-contracting checklist. The funds are appropriated to you. We just need some information to be able to disperse them to you and for you to say, yes, we accept those and want to use them. From there is a yearly report to Treasury each October 31st. Like I said before, the state and many others throughout the state have said there's no rush. You do not have to spend these funds by October 31st, obviously. So the report you would do, like say this October 31st, just all zeros in the expenditures, that's totally acceptable. And then yes, you're just looking at the timeline of December 31st, 2024 to either expend or encumber, and then final deadline for all expenditures and projects and everything delivered and done, December 31st, 2026.
The application, what's the main questions on that?
And the way to think of that is not so much as an application like a typical grant application. That pre-contracting checklist I mentioned is like a W-9 form that just has your town's financial information on it so that the funds can go to that account.
Not what you're gonna use it for, nothing like that.
No, you understand that Treasury has eligible guidelines like we've talked about, but there's no application that you either.
But you just get the money and then you have to spend it for that specific causes, or you send it back.
You spend it on eligible uses, with Treasury. If it's deemed not an eligible use, local governments have to pay the money back.
You heard what he said health uses.
Due to the pandemic.
Yes,
So
so,
much has that affected us?
I know that's, it's affecting me a lot. It's not affecting me.
And if we need help with paperwork,
Can you
would
prove
y'all
it?
come in and help us with it?
the state can provide technical assistance. And we've, done that throughout when you, want to accept the funds. We can help with that process, and we are working with stakeholders like the UNC School of Government, the League of Municipalities. Those are all folks we're all working together. Yes, just to assist in that process, because it's a lot of, like I said, there are 525 NEUs in the state. All 525 report to Treasury like I described. And it's
Read the number that,
it's quite a process.
The Yellow Book audit process, that is not something that we're familiar with, we've ever dealt with, and from what we listened to in one of the Zoom meetings we were in, some towns are having to hire a completely different auditor because their auditor is not even familiar with, the Yellow Book audit process. So, that's one of our big concerns is the paperwork and the not knowing, and even our auditor not even being familiar with what the Treasury Department is requiring.
Right, that's the accounting and reporting on these funds is very important, and it is specific and detailed.
And that is one reason why I have heard that some of the towns have backed out, because number one, like us, right here, we really don't have anything that we definitely apply for, that we are, can get. And so they go through they're worried about going through all this work and all this paperwork and hiring new auditors, and then there's nothing that they can use it for.
That is a really important question to have answered. Because people ask, well, what are the eligible uses? I can answer that. And what is the reporting requirement? I can answer that, but when it comes down to capacity at each local government to be able to do this over the years, you'd have to do it. It's a very important consideration. You're right. And we have resources to help and technical assistance to help, but it's still, when it's not the state that's ultimately responsible, it's the local government that's ultimately responsible for Treasury. This is a very important, thing to know. You had your hand up for a while, sorry. Yeah.
I just have a question. Say we had a family and somebody died from the coronavirus, a family in our neighborhood, can you use the money for like funeral expenses, paying their electric bill, stuff like that, if somebody was to die in our neighborhood?
Yes, this is actually a question I can give a yes or no to, but yes.
So it would be worth
Assistance to, as well as to widowers, or folks who died from COVID, you're right, yes. That's one that's actually explicitly those words exactly, so I can finally say, yeah. Yes.
So if they get the money, can that money be used toward like sound equipment, like in the room, because we've had to use such a bigger room and there are impaired people, would that be something that you could use that money toward as well?
So a public facility, if it's in a public facility, I can, again, all these kind of questions I always want to look back over. But from just off the top of my head, upgrades to a public facility to respond to COVID. We experienced that a lot with CRF, where we switched very quickly to all of our public meetings needing to be done virtually or online, and different local governments had different capacities to do that, didn't have the equipment they needed. That was an eligible expense under the coronavirus relief funds, and depending on some of the details, I would just, I'm immediately thinking of the eligibility of upgrades lot of the facilities to respond to COVID. That's something that is mentioned with these local fiscal recovery funds. So while I would want to double check, it sounds like that's,
Who has to approve the funds?
what's that?
Who has to approve your request? The treasurer? I mean, when you say you get the money, okay? you got the
Yes.
money. Who approves what you're gonna use it?
Gotcha, yes, that's, you report to Treasury what you're planning to or have used the funds on. Again, with technical assistance available from the state and other stakeholders.
We'll get.
I know it's a lot to consider. I have a background in grant management for a smaller community, so I know it's a lot to think through. So, any questions after tonight, or again, I do regret that we kind of have the September 15th kind of date for whether you plan to accept or decline. So there is that, but. Before that, I'm able to answer any questions. My number's on there, my email as well, so.
So you don't need it tentative, you want to know yea or no?
Yeah, that's kind of, and that is just because of the treasury deadline for the state. And actually, the state has requested multiple extensions and we've received them. So it's we're kind of, as far as I know, and I'm way down here, but as far as I know, we've kind of exhausted all those extensions. So we kind of just to the point where we're either getting them or not, kind of thing. If there are no more, I think I went way over 15 minutes, so I apologize. And like I said, always available by phone or email.
Okay.
Okay.
Adam, we appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe trip back.
Oh, thank you.
And we get back with you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, please do.
Watch those deer going back to South Florida.
Okay, certainly will.
I'm gonna try something different tonight, a different angle. Judy gave me this idea last month. Now, the problem is, even on wide angle, right?
Technical difficulties.
Judy, your idea was a good one, it just takes adjusting to where it, now everybody is actually in the shot.
Okay, now we have reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of August the 9th, 2021.
Yeah, we did.
We adopted it.
The regular meeting of the Town of Arlington Board of Aldermen was held at the Town Hall on August 9th, 2021, immediately following the public hearing at 8:20 p.m. Present were Mayor Bill Kirby, Alderman Ada McDonald, Sylvia Galloway, Judy Galloway, John David Dawson III, Dennis Swain, and Clerk Sandy Parrish. The agenda was approved with a motion by Alderman S. Galloway, seconded by Alderman Dawson. The regular meeting minutes of July 12th, 2021 were approved as read with a motion by Alderman McDonald, seconded by Alderman S. Galloway. Mayor Kirby read an excerpt from the December 2012 regular meeting minutes stating that Alderman McDonald has heard good feedback on the new parking areas. She suggested that we get a sign to designate the area for the oystermen and clammers. Alderman Robinson stated his concern about designating the land now instead of waiting in case there is another use that the town would like to use the area for at a later the board decided to wait until a later date to decide on the designation of land. Alderman McDonald stated that since that day, the board voted to put a sign up at the boat ramp parking. The board also voted to resurface the boat ramp parking lot. We had to check with CAMA, the engineer, etc. Mayor Kirby stated that he wanted the citizens to vote on the designated use of the lot because it was never voted on. Alderman McDonald made a motion to designate the lot as a parking lot for Varnumtown resident only. Alderman Swain stated that he found the property, he believes it was to be used as a parking lot and it should stay that way. Alderman Swain seconded the motion. Mayor Kirby stated that there was another dead tree on the property and asked Doug McDonald to take it down. Alderman McDonald stated that a vote needed to be taken on the motion. The motion passed unanimously. Mayor Kirby stated that he wanted to have a town clean sweep on September 11th, 2021, and the rain date to be followed Saturday, September 18th, 2021. Alderman S. Galloway stated that due to it still being hot in September, the date should be moved to October. Mayor Kirby moved the town clean sweep dates to October 2nd, 2021, and the rain date to October 9th, 2021. Mayor Kirby noted that he wants to meet at the town hall at 9 a.m. He reported the NCDOT will provide vests and bags. Afterwards, the town will have drinks and hot dogs that will be prepared by Harvey Champion, and that the state would pick up the bags from the roadside. Alderman McDonald stated that Sam Shore from CFGOC contacted her about the American Rescue Plan Act. Based on the information that is out at that time, the town would not qualify. Mayor Kirby stated that the town of Charlotte had even backed out. Alderman McDonald reported that she has been trying for 2 years to get the NCDOT in Charlotte to repair the deep hole in the shoulder of the road at Stanberry Run. She has decided to get an aerial photo of the hole and will send it and a letter to the Wilmington DOT office. Alderman Dawson reported that Terry Willits is out of town until the end of August. He will come to the town hall and make his recommendations when he gets back. And that Mike Fulford did not want to make any recommendations until the soundboards were fixed. He suggested more soundboards in the community room and adding soundboards to the meeting room. His past estimate was between $7,000 and $10,000 depending on the quality of the equipment. Alderman Dawson suggested waiting on Terry Willets' recommendation before deciding. The clerk reported that permits for service pole 2 HVAC changeout were issued. BEMC subcontractor damaged the baseball field at the park when installing the new streetlight poles. The clerk contacted BEMC and the ruts have been repaired. She has been doing research on different forms of mass contact alert systems that the town could utilize for informing the town citizens. During public comments, Doug McDonald expressed appreciation to Alderman Dawson for following up on the microphone system for the town. Cindy Ridenhour stated that the DOT should be contacted every day until something is done about the roads, the grass getting cut, etc. As there was no further business to discuss, Alderman S. Galloway made a motion to adjourn, seconded by Alderman Dawson. Motion was passed.
You have a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes read.
Second,
I'll second.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes, carried. Thank you, Cindy. Old business.
I have to do the minutes for the public hearing.
Oh, okay, I see it now.
The purpose of the public hearing held on August 9, 2021 was to adopt the golf cart ordinance and to amend the subdivision ordinances. Present were Mayor Bill Kirby, Alderman John David Dawson III, Eddie McDonald, Sylvia Galloway, Judy Galloway, Ennis Swain, and Clerk Sandy Parrish. Mayor Kirby called the public hearing to order. Alderman McDonald presented the golf cart ordinance, which had also been submitted to and reviewed by the town attorney. Mayor Kirby opened the floor for public comments. After all public comments and board discussions were made, Alderman J. Galloway made a motion to accept the presented golf cart ordinance, seconded by Alderman S. Galloway. Motion was 4 yes, 1 no, motion passed. Alderman McDonald presented the suggested amendments for the subdivision ordinances. Those being for Riverside 1 subdivision ordinance, section 105.05 definitions, add the definition of structure, section 105.07 restrictions and reservations, add lots recorded prior to Riverside 1 subdivision ordinance adopted May 12, 1997 are grandfathered in. Major subdivision ordinance, section 102.005 definition, add definition of structure. Minor subdivision ordinance, section 101.075, design standards for erosion sediment control. Currently, C is all major subdivisions shall have a minimum of 45-foot right-of-way for streets, whether designated public or private. Amended to minimum of 30-foot right-of-way. Section 101.005 definitions, add the definition of structure. After all discussions, Alderman McDonald made a motion to accept all amendments as presented, seconded by Alderman Dawson, motion passed unanimously. Alderman J. Galloway made a motion to adjourn, seconded by Alderman S. Galloway, motion passed.
Do we have that, 30-foot easement also on the minor as well as the major?
Was it,
The easement was, to be, reduced from 45 to 30 in
for both
the,
of them?
yeah, in the minor and the major.
Okay. I think what I did was I went by,
I'll let mine home. Cause they have to be consistent.
yeah. That's your size. I went by this, so if it was, it's not listed under this one, but it's listed under the minor, but if it was voted on, and I just need to add
Okay,
that
so-
back into it.
But you do have it under the minor,
I do.
and that's good, because, I don't think the major, yeah, the major's fine, it's the minor, yes, and is that what's in the minutes, is to the minor? That's good, that's good.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the public hearing minutes as read, August the 9th, 2021?
So, I'll say.
All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, old business.
We have drone shots, and I have found out what's wrong, that where it's washing out down the stand there, it's that culvert, it's washing out on both sides of the culvert. And so, I got Trevor to take his drone down there, and we've got the shots. And we just got this week, the weather was such, but anyway, so we're gonna get them to the town hall, to Sandy, so she can make the contacts. I'll get the letter done and we'll get the contacts made, but we do have a screenshot, and we've determined what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
It is the culvert.
After our meeting the next day or two, I called, Wilmington, and they said I'd have to talk to Iris and Shalou. I called her, she just got off vacation, she promised me that she would do so. And here to this
She
day,
promised me, well, both of us for 2 years.
nothing's happened here. And also, I got a report where the sign, like coming from Brown's Landing, I think that's, Stone Chimney, that intersection where you have a stop sign in this, island, and on the other, that stop sign been down for at least a month now. I called Wilmington, they supposed to replace that hasn't been replaced yet. So, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, they, the small towns are really having a hard time getting anything to do.
Any attention.
Who is the supervisor above Wilmington?
Wilmington, they have different supervisors under different, sections of the state.
But since the Wilmington supervisor isn't responding, that person should have a supervisor in Raleigh.
And I think they need to go Charlotte is not responding. That, you know, have you told them that, so you told Wilmington that Charlotte's not responding?
They're definitely not responding.
But we've got pictures now. And I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like when they see the amount of erosion around this cul-de-sac, maybe that'll get their attention.
Maybe we should send it to Wilmington, and they send it to ours, and say, hey, look, this needs to be taken
I
care
sent pictures of our yard when it was flooding to Wilmington.
That's,
They can
that's
see.
probably where we need to send it.
Send it to the district office in
Yeah,
Wilmington.
yeah. I agree there. And if we don't get a response, we'll send it to our representative.
I don't wanna make her too mad, because I'm supposed to go up and get those jackets and trash bags.
Well, then if she does her job, there's no reason to get her in trouble.
Any more old business? Okay.
Sound system report, Terry actually called me the Monday, the 16th, the week after our last meeting. He is working out of county, out of state, doing his wiring business, but he had come home to pick up some more wire and stuff, and said, if you can meet me out there, we'll go over stuff. So he met me out here. He agreed with Mike that the ballpark estimate is going to be between $8,000 and $10,000 for the portable system. And that was the same 8 mics, the 7 table stands, the 1 regular stand, the soundboard, 2 speakers. He also agreed with Mike in terms of the general layout, 2 speakers in here, 1 speaker in the small room. And he said that if we were going to use this room for meetings, that he would recommend moving these tables back as far as we could get them to kind of have the sound project out that way a little bit more instead of us kind of being in the middle of the room. He asked the question, who's going to be the sound man? And I told him not me. And he said that the problem that we would probably run into that may require repeated adjusting is that he could set the knobs and the sliders, and he could fix us a little table thing to move the soundboard from one room to the other. But we were gonna have to be very careful when we move that soundboard, because if we bump any of those knobs or sliders and get them out of position, we're gonna have squealing microphones, which means either he's gonna have to come out here and readjust the system, or Mike, if Mike will come out, so we're gonna have to have somebody that actually knows what they're doing with the soundboard if we get it out of whack, moving it back and forth. He said that could be done, that he'd come out and readjust it. He also gave an option, there's something, and Gay, I hope you know what he's talking about. I've never seen one of these, but he called it a microphone pad. Have you ever heard of one since you've?
When he said that, what was he referring to it doing?
He said instead of using the table microphone stands, that since some people had this natural kind of fear of holding the microphone close to your mouth where it actually needs to be, that you could have a microphone pad that would be a soft pad to lay it on, and then when each of us wanted to speak, pick it up to kind of force ourselves to put it up near our mouth so that it would actually broadcast out. But that was another option, and that might actually work better in the small room to have pads in there and stands in here. So that was one more option. He was leaving first thing that Tuesday morning to go back out of town wherever it is that he's wiring, whatever it is he's wiring. And he said when he got back into town the next time, that he would write up the official estimate, see what he had in the sound shop, Cause he said he basically does sound now as a hobby, that wiring is his main occupation now. But that he thought that he had enough, wireless equipment in the sound shop that he wouldn't have to order anything, and if he's got it in the sound shop, he could give us a little bit better discount than having to buy something new. But he hasn't called me back. So I'm still waiting to get the official estimate from him. But he was in agreement with Mike, $8,000 to $10,000 for the system, and he did want to know, have we got money appropriated for it? That if he works up the estimate and commits, here's what I can do, are we going to be able to do it this year?
We need to do it, you know, because we just already talked about it.
So,
And that they might can use it out of something else, you know.
Discretionary.
On the contingency fund, maybe?
So far we've not.
David, you say that we needed some more soundboards?
yeah, I mean, he agreed with Mike that this room could be better soundboarded than it is, and that room could use some. He said he'd give us an estimate on the system either way, whether we put more soundboards up or not. But that,
We probably need more sound.
Definitely.
Probably put it on the ceiling.
and the first 5-6 minutes we were here, he and I just kind of got in different positions in the room, and he was wanting, you know, talk low, so that he could kind of look at and listen at the sound bouncing. And he said there is definitely a sound problem in each room. That the bounce needs to be controlled way better than it is in each room.
And we don't have an estimate on putting the soundboards up, do we?
No,
And whether even needed, we don't, probably the ceiling would be the next option.
he did ask me about, had we ever considered carpeting this floor, because that would also dampen the bounce down.
Make a huge difference.
If you carpeted this room, then I wouldn't see how in the world you could use it for community.
Yeah.
That room would be the first option to.
Yeah.
Every time somebody uses the room, you have to move all the equipment out.
Cause usually this back here for parties, and the carpet would not last.
So, and he did mention putting some up in the ceilings, but he said if we wanted to dampen the sound in here more, carpet would be a big factor.
Yeah.
Soundboards up on the ceiling would be the next choice. And I told him this was the birthday party, anniversary party room.
What about below the chair rail on the wood part? Would that help? Cause that'd be closer to the floor.
I think we need to try some more soundboards before we spend that
Put
much
sound
money.
down below the chair rail. Well, your sound, I think the reason Terry probably was talking about putting them like on the ceiling, because you got a hard surface here, a hard surface here, hard surface here, and sound bounces from one hard surface to the next. So, I mean, any additional soft surface, whether it's even on the lower part, even curtains on the windows, anything that is something that absorbs sounds at all will help. This room's not as bad as your other room, because you do have some sound panels in here. So, of course, you can hear the echo, and you could do with more. The other room actually definitely needs sound panels. But anything that's a soft surface absorbs sound, it keeps it from bouncing.
So since he hasn't called me back, and I didn't realize until this morning he hadn't called me back when I started to write this stuff up, I'll see if I can get up with him and ask him if he's ready to give an official estimate and have that ready by the next meeting.
Do we need to find somebody that can do the soundboards? instead of getting one and then start another, when you get it all at one time.
Sandy, do you have any idea where these came from?
They were here before I got here.
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I suggest that we try some more signboards before we spend all that money.
Well, if we got the system, you probably still need soundboards.
Yeah.
That's what we say,
We don't get soundboards before. we get the
Yeah,
system.
I would say get soundboards and then see how that month will sit, and then see if we need the, system.
That was Mike's concern as to why he would not give any further than a ballpark estimate, is that his feeling is until you control the sound better in both rooms, if you amplify it,
it's gonna be worse.
it's gonna be worse on those that are hard of hearing, until you get the sound banks controlled.
Good stand. Well, I reckon we can Google search. Doesn't kind of work.
Let's get the sound control first.
If I can get up with him again, if he's back in the county, cause he was actually out of the state the last time, the very first time that I called. So,
But he doesn't do that, put up samples and stuff like that.
he may have a catalog, but
Well, if you could Google it, you reckon somebody
You
would
can.
answer or something?
There's a bunch of them on there.
You did Google,
We can find somebody to do it.
Put up the phone.
Because you know, we've got these, and I guarantee you somebody through local, but I can't remember where we
We
were.
will need another one. Somebody. Okay.
so that's my old report.
Are we still in old business?
Any more, yeah, old business?
Do we
The,
need a motion on the soundboard?
no, we're still getting, we're trying to still get estimates to find out who can do it. The boat ramp, there's an area into the boat ramp, it's a surface area that's, breaking down. Anyway, I finally got up with TJ's Marine, and I've got it in writing that, they're gonna make it good. However, let me refer to Dave, he went down there and he's talked with 3 or 4 different people. Dave, can you explain that about the concrete, the boat ramp? That, you know, that the repair, it might not be time for the repair, how weakening the whole thing?
I've been dealing with, Toby for some time, and we got to thinking about it, and to fix that boat ramp down there, that cement is 10 inches thick. The bad spots that's in it's probably about that wide, I think, and you're about all the way across at 16 foot long. It's about, some of the places is about that deep. I guess some of you always used the boat ramp, you probably looked at it. Anyway, some of the places about like that, then it's some shallow and stuff like that.
And how long is the bad place? How long is the bad place?
Well, it's here and yonder, near about all the way across it.
what's it look like, what's the bad place look
And
like?
it's about that wide.
Breaking up.
And what happened when they poured the cement, that the tide come in and kind of, diluted the cement, I reckon, and it just caused a little rough place on the top. What I can understand, if the boat ramp, say here's the boat ramp, and if you go all the way across and cut a section out, just like that right there, and that stuff's 10 inches thick, and you put it back, then you cut those rods in two,
Yeah.
and then you made that place weak, right there was ain't gonna be but about a 4 foot place, and then them heavy boats is gonna start rocking it like that. So, I went down there and asked Terrence today, I said, Terrence, you go to Red River Day. I said, what do you think about the cement here? He said, it ain't changed. He said, the day that it started doing that, it's staying the same, it's not changed. And I said, what do you think about cutting it out or leaving it alone? He said, definitely I'd leave it alone. Well, I went over and asked Alex. Alex said the same thing, said instead of cutting that piece all the way across, he said I'd leave it alone. And then I asked some more, I asked Robert Robinson, and I've asked a bunch of people, and every one of them said, if you're smart, you'll leave it alone. So what we could do, we could tell Toby that if it gives any problems in the future, and maybe let him sign something, that if it gets worse, then he can come and fix it. Because he was gonna try to fix it before Worcester season. And, and I think that too, that it should be left alone. I mean, that's just my opinion. Because cement, when you pour back that cement is not gonna bond. And if you put rods across there, you know, that go one up and up, then it will bond. So, I think that it'd be a wise thing that we would leave it alone.
How could he ever fix it without?
Well,
Cause
see,
those
right now-
rods in there.
Right now, it's just surface damage.
I know.
But if it goes deeper,
Right,
then
that's what I'm
it's
saying.
worse.
Yeah, but how would he be able to fix it then without messing up the rods and everything that's running through there?
But you
How
got,
can it ever be fixed?
but you got 8 inches of cement under there that's not, you know, cracking or anything, so it's just that
Yeah,
little
but where's the
top.
rods at? Is it below that 8 inches?
The rods is all through there. The rods is just, I mean, it's like in squares right there. When they run the rods like that, then they turn around and run the rods like this right here. And they're gonna have to cut it all out, because you can't go in there and beat that stuff up and put cement back in.
Is that for strengthening the rods? Is that for the strength?
Yeah.
Reinforcement.
Yeah.
It looks like a grid, think of a grid,
Could-
and then they pour the
Now-
concrete in the grid, on the grid.
Could they just put a patch over it? In other words, leave the concrete alone and put a patch over it, would that work?
Put more cement on them places.
Yeah.
That cement, it won't bond, because it's hard to bond cement to cement. I think, am I right?
You're right.
Yeah, cement's hard to bond. And so it'd be cracked right up and stuff, so.
And tell them about that dog.
Oh, and there's another problem too. You know the dock that Sammy used to, help pull the boats up, that little old dock's about that wide? That main Uncle Dock, we fixed it, because when the storm come, it picked it up, and me and him, we put it back down level. Well, these young ones getting up on it, May Mercy's been down there, and we kind of put some tape around it and try to keep people off of it. But there was some children on it yesterday, running up down the dock. And there's no handrails there. So y'all need to think about what to do there with that dock. If it was me, in my opinion, nobody else's, Ada's not saying nothing to me about this, just my opinion, that I would get rid of that dock, because it's, I don't see what you use it for. Because the end of it is broke off, and it don't go nowhere, except overboard. So y'all think about that and shoot it around your heads and see what you're going to know. We're gonna have to fix it some kind of way to keep the children off that dock. Or just like I said, there's no handrails, no doubt. So, and so, just, and what do y'all think about the ramps? I can tell Toby tomorrow about, what we need to do there.
Well, what's the consensus of the board on that? What do y'all think? About what Vivian just explained to us about the boat ramp, about that's concrete, and just leave it as is, because if it goes in and cuts it, it won't have the support, it'll weaken, that area. Because you can't use reinforcement, you'll be cutting through the reinforcement.
Well, has Tony been down here to look at it?
We seen him pictures, we got, the drone pictures, and he's got, we waited till a real low water and got pictures of all of it, he's got it.
So then, what is his recommendation since he built it?
I couldn't understand.
What is his recommendation since he's the one that built it?
What does did Toby say how he would fix it, or?
The last time I talked with him, that's what he's gonna do, but I was gonna call him tomorrow. I tried to call him today, but, I didn't get up with him, because he'd been so busy. Because I was gonna ask him what in stone that how he was gonna fix it. But I'm pretty sure, talking to some of his help, that's what he's gonna do. But that last statement didn't come out of Toby's mouth, it didn't come out. But if you want to, I'll try to call tomorrow, and if I get up with him, maybe Eddie can contact, y'all and let y'all know what he said, or what.
You think it can be used like it is from what you said?
He said, you think the boat ramp can be used left like it is?
Well, Alex told me how big a boat is being built in and there, and he said, and it changed, I mean, that little place ain't changed or nothing, so the weight's been going in there, and, so.
The ones that's using it are saying, leave it like it is, because it's just a surface deterioration.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so if they think that, I think that's what we're able to do.
And Ennis, did you understand about the dock?
No, I can't place the dog.
Okay, it's a narrow dock, and it was there, by the railway. It's one that Sandy built. And during the storm, it buckled right up, it just buckled up. And Doug and Knott got it put back down. But the boards are deteriorating, and there's no handrails on it. And it just doesn't really go anywhere, it's just straight out, there's.
Is it a walkway or a dog?
Well, it's a dock, but they put up yellow tape, danger, keep off, but the tape keeps getting down, and children are running on that dock, and there's no handrails, or that's the.
And if somebody wants to go in there and get hurt, say a kid or something, are y'all liable for that or anything? I mean.
And maybe we need assign people.
I don't know. There's a sign up there that says no trespassing, but you take little kids, they ain't gonna read that sign. So that's something y'all can shoot around, and we'll try to keep them off of it till y'all decide something.
Maybe we'll.
But Toby, when we was talking to him about coming and fixing the ramp, he was willing to pull up those pilings and those steel H-beams, steel H-beams. He was gonna get all that dangerous stuff out of the way, and he could take care of that dock if we wanted him to. Whenever he can come, and I don't know exactly when that is, he just said he would.
And take care of that cement, that cement goes up like that. He was gonna look at that and give a price too, because I've had 5 people go down and look at it, and every one of them said that they don't touch it.
Now, did you say you had it in writing that he was gonna be responsible for the boat ramp?
That he would, yeah, cause I was getting a little concerned there. Cause I asked him if he was going to make it good, and he said, and this is from his secretary, she said, I talked with Toby, and yes, he wants to get your ramp repaired and do the other work for you also. When I know more of a date, I'll let you know.
Well, if we feel like it's best just leave the ramp as is, then get him down to pull up those old metal pilings. And if we think about tearing that dock up, and if he can take up that slab as well.
So it's what
And then tell us that right now, the ramp is okay, but if something happens, it should get worse, then he can make that good.
yeah, I'll just tell him if it, and I'll try to get him sign a paper saying that if we let it rest, and if it starts giving us a problem, will he come and fix it? And I will try to talk him in, doing that also.
Did he give us any type of warranty when he did it, the work?
No, I looked at the contract, and the only guarantee that I saw was that he guaranteed what was in the contract as far as the material used, it would be that material. but he's always made good his work, and he said he would. When we emailed him the pictures and everything, he said he would make it good.
Dougie, about what the kids is getting on, is it for any particular use or what?
He said that little dock, that's dangerous. He said, is there any use for it? Is it being used for anything?
It's not being used right now for anything.
It's not
And
safe.
I don't know what it could be used for. I mean, it could be used for something, but I don't see, anything that it could be used for. Because if you was to even put a T-head down there, you know, little T-head people sit down, it's too narrow. Because you could use that other dock. You could use the dock that's down there, that big white one down there, and then you make a little T down there and do that if you want to do that. But I don't see no, use to it.
Is it even 3 feet wide?
Do I know?
Is it even 3 feet wide?
How wide is
It's,
the
I'd
dock?
say it's probably, is that about right, Kenny, about like that?
It's about 3 feet.
Yeah, about 3 foot, 3 foot in.
Is there no railings on it?
Cause I remember seeing when they take their boats up there, some of the crews will go out there and walk up and try to guide it.
Yeah.
So it isn't wide at all.
And let me ask Kenny something, what do you think about the cement? Kenny, you go down there and look at the, proper cement.
At this point, I think you need to leave it like it is.
You just leave it.
At this point, you need to leave it like it is.
Yeah.
I feel like I was there when he poured it, and he shouldn't have poured it when he poured it. He poured it in running salt water, and he shouldn't have done that. But now, after the fact, leave it like it is.
Yeah, cause see, right where that place is at, it takes like extra low water, and then it's under the water. About like that, hardly ever has ever come out. And it is hard to pour cement and get it level under the water.
You can't, especially running water, you can't do it. You can't do it on running water. And the tide was running when he poured it.
Well, it was, dead low water when he poured it. Cause he had to, cause he couldn't go down there about that deep water trying to do that.
Yeah, I understand that the day before, it made a real low water, and he thought that day would be the same thing, but that doesn't happen very often. You're right. Every now and then, it has a low water of that nature.
It's hard to come out.
And the next day, it didn't do it. And he poured it in the water and probably shouldn't have.
And Dave, let me ask you one thing and I'll shut up. If you'll get that, I couldn't understand what y'all was talking about a while ago. But if y'all could get the system like we got at the church, they got them little things about that big, I don't know what to call them, but you stick it in your ear. And I can go to the church, take it in my ear, stick it in my pocket, and the pastor is just as clear as a Christian. I can understand every word he says. And is there any way that we could probably get something like that hooked to what y'all gonna get?
Yeah, that's just an individual hearing device for the hearing impaired. So we can buy those in addition to what we've got, what we've been talking about. It'll raise the price up, but those work on the same wireless technology, so we can order 4 or 5 of those.
Yeah, because I can set in my truck out in the parking lot, listen to the pastor just as good as I can do. But anyway, that's all I got to say about the ramp, and I'm gonna try to call Toby tomorrow, and just tell him to hold off, or what?
Maybe hold off on the concrete, but go ahead, if the board feels we need to take that pier up and take those metal pilings up and dust up that pad, for us to go ahead and get that done.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this here. How about if I contact Toby and tell him to see if he can be to the next meeting, and that way you can sit there and talk to him about the horse thing. And if he can come, and that way y'all can ask questions. And he,
down here for that.
huh?
I said, I doubt you get him down here for that.
Well, I know that's a long drive he's got to go, but still I can ask him, and if he will, then I'll just get him to tell me y'all can ask the question.
I say, we leave the boat ramp alone, the part they talking about, everybody agreed it's workable. Now, what the kids is playing on, if it's not used, we might have to get rid of that, but I'm not, I
vote to go ahead and get him down here, take the pad up, take the dock up, and those steel piers up,
Yeah, those H-beams.
H-beams.
Is that what's out there at the end of that?
There was
metal.
and steel, H-beam.
And all that stuff.
Because he
That's
put
what
that big old
somebody
rock.
did it, right, one time?
Yeah, and he put that red float to try to let people know, because a lot of times it's underwater,
Right.
and you don't see it.
Right.
It's,
Yeah, that's
it's not a good situation.
We will
Right.
soon.
But anyway, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Also,
And I'll say,
Any discussion?
What you gonna do now?
We're gonna get Toby down here, he's gonna take that small dock up, take that pad up, and also those, beams, steel beams out in the water, where some boats have been hit in it.
I'm not familiar enough with it to know.
Oh, Billy, there was one more,
The beams you talk about, that's what Knox had down there when he was using it?
Them steel out that
That-
railway.
it's left over from the railway,
Right over the railway.
and some of them are underwater, and you don't know they're there. You know, the tide's up, you run into them.
Get on your boat.
and then there's one more bit, about the sidewalks. Bay Forest has contacted some people, and we can't even get them, calls back. Down this one that come and give me a halfway price. He said, every what the cement is, the day that he pours it, is what, that's what it's gonna cost per yard. That's gonna be the labor.
Later with.
Okay, Burris has got the figures of it, so I'll get Tony to figure the cement up, because I'm telling you, when Tony figured, it ain't that much left. And I can figure the cement up, and Burris can come wherever who, and give you about what it's gonna cost to do the, I think it's like 300 and some feet of sidewalk, and I think it's, 4.5, something like that, 5 foot, something like that. But anyway, I wanted to let you know that we have contacted people and nobody's.
Appreciate that. All right. Then a motion, second, let's discuss, and all in favor? Opposed? 4 and 1.
Any opposed?
Nobody?
I'm gonna have to vote on it.
Yeah, extension, abstention.
No, another vote is a yes.
Yeah.
Did you understand what we were voting on?
Yeah,
Did you hear what clerk said, no votes, yes?
Yeah, he knows that.
Okay. Old business, or any more old business? Well, I guess it's time to move. We're gonna talk about the clean sweep. I've talked with Iris, like I said, I don't wanna make her mad, so I can get their jackets and everything. And, I would like for us to be here, say, 9 p.m.
There you go.
I'm in the evening. It's getting late, we won't hurry up and do this.
Anybody will say.
9 a.m. and we have hot dogs, chips, drinks, and maybe some cookies, and ketchup, mustard, and Wink said he would cook for us. And we need to figure about how many people will be here for lunch, because all are invited. And we would need to have like golf carts to help follow us up around the streets, and we'll assign streets and territories. And then we have pickup trucks also to pick us up or whatever. And Iris said that we can just leave the bags on the shoulder of the road, and they will come down and pick them up for us, so we don't have to take them anywhere and pile them up. And I think we should probably eat, what y'all think, at 12 o'clock, have lunch ready for 12, and for the whole town to come out, have lunch with us. We got to figure out a way about how many people's gonna be here, how to get them signed up.
But Bill, do we have enough trash on the shoulders of the road now? I don't know about Sabathun Road, but, I was looking, I believe I came out to town hall and going back, I didn't see but 3 or 4 things sprinkled out. I mean, that could change next week.
Well, and y'all prefer just not have a clean sweep and have a cookout?
I just I don't know,
What time you talking about?
unless
What
it
day?
does change.
October the
I
second,
can't set it up for that many people to get out.
you have,
I've been kind of noticing, I've been looking since,
yeah.
And I'm getting hell getting underwear up down here.
Hey, you and Doug, y'all have a lot of array factories while that is advertising. Jay,
Was riding my bike the other day, me and Judy talked about this the other day. And Judy, I meant to tell you when I was out riding my bike the other day, actually, if y'all been seeing a fox squirrel right here lately, he's dead. He got hit and Mike and I stopped and took care of him until he died and took him home and buried him. We were sitting right out here and I just happened to notice while we were riding and stopped, there was no less than 5 or 6 pieces of paper and trash not in her yard, but along the side of her yard. And as we were walking back up, there was trash on the shoulder of the road. I don't notice it when I'm driving in my car. When I'm driving in my car, I don't notice it. But when it's riding a bike or walking, you do notice it.
See, when you pick yours up.
Girl, I have to pick it up every time I go to yard.
That's right.
I must be the worst
I have to
there.
pick it up, yeah.
I need some fence through there.
That's
I get gifts all the time.
The worst
okay,
area.
so the trash pickup's on again.
And I was just making my observation.
So it's 9 a.m.
Well, I walked the whole loop, around the other week, and there was trash all in the side of the road. So when you walk and see it, you can see it. Yeah, more than if you're driving, yeah.
I know it's flying over in the ditches too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Tammy actually told me that about a year ago, her and her daughter were walking from their house up to where Jonathan stays in the old Raleigh house. And they decided just while they were out walking that they would just carry a trash bag with them. And they did. They carried more than one trash bag, and they picked up 3 bags of trash between her house and the Raleigh house. And that's what she told to me.
So I think probably if we get enough people and have certain areas, it shouldn't take us over a couple hours to
Identify what area to go.
sweep the whole town. So now, how would be the best way to try to get a count? Should we have a sign-up sheet under the carport? Can we also do it with Varnertown page? Sandy?
Y'all really need to be careful using that Varnumtown page, Facebook page, because it's not an official Varnumtown page. So I'm again going to advise y'all to be very, very careful about what y'all post on that Facebook page, because it is not an official Varnumtown page.
Who created that thing?
I think it was me.
Oh.
Gary?
Many years
You were
ago.
the mayor and created it.
Yeah, but I noticed, not as a town, I just did it, you know.
Yeah.
Out of the blue, and then Sandy told me all this. I thought I was going to jail.
So how's the best way to put a sign-up sheet out there, put it on the marquee, and,
Have one at the churches.
say again?
Have one at the churches.
Yeah, have one in churches, have it announced at the churches.
You probably, if you're gonna have sign-up sheets, you need to have a deadline date by when you can sign up by, so you can take those sheets on that day and have the numbers by that day.
You got a cutoff date, got to have a cutoff date.
Unless you're up to date a little bit, I don't understand how that wrong. We'll get people signed up.
So we can announce it in churches Sunday.
Excuse me, if I post it on my personal Facebook page,
Yeah.
and then people can share it, and then they can share it, and then they can
And we all
share
can
it.
post it on our Facebook pages, personal pages.
We just can't.
Date count, what day?
October the 2nd. And rain date, October the 9th. Week
Is
later.
that a Saturday?
That's a Saturday.
Well, all the cookout will be outside, right?
Right, and I'm thinking out here, we might want to predict it. And when they have some good fellowship and everything.
So the eating and everything will be done.
It's better to have it tomorrow if you have more on. Or you got a few tables out there, you think you got.
Yeah, we got a lot of tables out there too now.
Our-
Okay.
If we're gonna be cleaning up right
then you don't go there anymore. But I mean, that's fine, you know,
So is someone gonna be responsible for having one type of sign-up sheet? So everybody, I mean, if they, everybody's gonna post it on, they don't know what to post yet. They don't know where to post, where to sign up, who to let know. Y'all need to figure that out so everybody know where they're supposed to go to sign up.
We can tell them to sign up under carport, have about 3 notepads on there, 4, 5, 6, several sheets of paper, so they can write their names and how many.
That's up to y'all. I mean, I don't know.
Y'all know a better way?
I don't know, some bus.
Well, she print out a sheet for here, print out one for each church.
Yeah.
It's mine, capital, today.
And then, like I said,
Have a
Facebook,
fill-off day.
tell them to come down here and, sign up.
And you got to have signatures by what day?
Pardon me?
When's the cutoff
When's
date
the
for
cutoff?
signature?
Okay, what we're saying October the 2nd. What's everybody's calendar look like for a cutoff date?
That's 3 weeks.
3 weeks? What do you think, a week before?
That's when you can go buy supplies, when you know how many people, right?
Monday the 27th.
He's saying the whole town will come out with a hot dog
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Not just the cleanup people, the whole
Okay.
town.
Well, that's what we need the number for, is how much to buy for, not
Right.
necessarily who's showing up to pick up trash.
So if we should put it like, in a set at churches, we announce it
We'll
this
put a
day.
cutoff date on the sign up.
So it's not just signing up to pick up, but sign up if you're planning on coming to the
Right,
cookout.
because a lot of people come eat and they won't come work. So, and some of them elderly and they can't.
Right. So,
So it's gonna be a hit. I mean, it's gonna be a hit and miss, we just put a miss in it.
You gonna limit the circumstance to those that work that day, or gonna have everybody?
Everybody,
That's a different question.
yeah, everybody.
I don't know how you plan for that.
Yeah. Well, you know, like I said, this will be our first time.
Probably.
yeah,
Pay for 100 people, and you'd be lucky to have enough to show up to eat.
100 people, you thinking? I think we
At
have
the
100.
most.
And
Yeah.
I think that would
And
figure
it's
about
been
100 people.
people.
And they get,
And then you give it to somebody needy person.
and then we can have different types of drinks, like maybe Coke, Pepsi, diet drinks, and water. Have a little variety of those drinks. And we'll have to get someone, probably go to Sam's or Costco to get the food. Do we have plates here? Napkins?
We don't have none of that stuff you do.
There's pieces of leftover pieces hit and miss, there's not enough to say that there's enough.
So we just probably need to go ahead and get some more new ones. So we can make a list to get that done too.
Don't let him say he goes down to all this stuff.
So there's a limit on 100 people.
Yeah, we count on at least 100.
All those funds, when we make plates, you just, napkins
Plates, napkins.
and condiments.
Yeah,
chips, you said chips?
chips and cookies. Can,
I know it's not a term that we can sign in the card, but it's a suggestion. Maybe deal with a local merchant and anything they don't use, you might carry back. Like hot dog rolls. I know you couldn't probably carry the hot dog themselves back, the winnings, but you could carry unused ketchup or unused mustard or unused rolls, you carry back food. Make a deal with them down there, and it's local, keep it in the community. And it may could return part of it if you don't need it. Just an idea.
maybe talk to Food Line or something like that.
Or Hills is more local, I don't know, just somewhere that you can carry the stuff back if you don't use it.
Yeah. Okay, that,
You get what you get.
You know, that's a lot.
so Anna should take care of your church for sign up, tell them about signing up and have sheets in.
Well, when you get it made, I'll put it post.
Yeah. Okay, all we got to do is just get
Now,
some
I'm gonna
paper.
tell you about the social. You know, you can count on what you get, how many you're gonna have. If you just say it's a social for those that clean up the town only, this is whenever the time's up, that's how many you'll have. But if you open it wide to the public, I don't know what you'll do.
We're planning on 100 people opening it up to the public.
Yeah, he's talking about opening it up to the public, whether you clean up or not, anybody can come in.
All right.
Okay, and we'll do one at Dixon also. Have a sign up sheet, and then
To go along with that, I had two of our candidates ask me to ask if the incumbents that are running would like to do a meet the candidates thing at the hot dog roast. And just give everybody 2 to 5 minutes to say what your vision for the town is, what you see that you would want to do if elected or re-elected. So would the incumbents like to participate in that?
I would.
When's that to do?
That would be during the hot dog roast. So,
You mean the same day as the social?
and that's part of the social. Just to let everybody know what your vision of the town is.
I think, David, that's gonna cross some ethic lines, seeing that the town is providing the food and the venue. I think that's gonna be really crossing some ethic lines on that. We might not need to do that at the same day, because the town is paying for it.
But they can still be here to campaign.
well, if they want to ask you a question,
Can't
sure.
say anytime you want to.
What do you feel about
But
this
as
issue?
far as advertising for that, I think that's, I don't think we need to be involved in that.
She might have a point to.
If the attorney was here, we'd be able to find out for certain.
You would have to research it.
Okay,
You might have looked up.
so that's my report, committee report. Clerk financial.
You just want to, I'll just do my whole report. We had permits for a storage shed, a generator, an underground electric, for a pool, 2 HVAC systems, a new construction. We, have paid Victory Baptist for our yearly, agreement, sign agreement. We have budgeted, to repair the roof. We had, we had already had that in the budget. We did a temporary repair last year to get us through to the budget year. I have not found another leak, in the main part. So Morris came and he saw where the leak was coming. He's temporarily tried to stop that, but he went ahead and contacted the contractor that we got the estimate from. And he has us on his list, so we're gonna have to go ahead and get those repairs done. The patchworks are done. So, that will be happening sometime soon.
But I think he told me October, I think he said something like that, wasn't it? In October?
Like when I talked to Morris, at that point, he told me that he had, left him a message and that, they were putting us on a list, next in line, but he didn't, at that time, he didn't give me a
I think
definite
it's
time.
October, I think sometime in October, I think, is what I remember saying.
And that's also something we need to, take in consideration with that's going on. We don't need to have any, activities going on in the building. So we need to make sure that nothing's planned for the building when that's going on, as far as the community room. I've continued to do research on finding mass information, ways to get out mass information. everything I keep coming across is either something that we can't implement, like data input with numbers, telephone numbers, or it's two-way text and mass things. I have left messages with 2 different companies, and I'm waiting to hear back from both of them, but I'm still looking. It appears that a lot of the towns are using their website to input emails, or they have, like the ones I have reached out to, they use their telephone system where they have to input every telephone number, but that's through their telephone company. That's something that their telephone company offers. And then there are some bigger towns where they just have their own app. They develop a web page, they develop their own app. So citizens can just go download their app, and then that's all they have to do if they want any information. So at this point, I'm still looking. If y'all can come up with any solutions, please guide me, because I've looked and reached out to everybody I know to look and reach out to. But I've got two numbers, 2 people I'm waiting on to hopefully get some information back from. I printed out, from the event chair. She sent us, the flyer for the spring craft fair. I printed one out for everyone. She has it scheduled for April the 30th, and all that printout is all the information that she has up to this point. So I just printed those out so I didn't have to read all that to everyone. And then the free cleanup week at the county is September the 13th through the 18th, the free dump week.
And we still got to get our ordinances recodified.
Yeah.
And I found another error.
These things are no.
That's gonna be a major undertaking.
Well, then we have to have another public hearing,
To get them all recodified.
if you found another error.
It will?
Is it an error that they did?
Yeah.
Oh, it's only.
Yeah, it's, yeah, they left out.
Oh, then that's
Oh,
all.
yeah,
I thought you
flags.
meant something that we
No.
should.
What we turned in, the writing was there. They left it out.
So they got it corrected.
Yeah, and they codified the whole, the Riverside ordinance, they codified the wrong one. Cause see, Sandy had to send them everything, they wanted everything. The ones that were active and the ones that were inactive, they had it, and they codified the wrong one. But I found, 2 or 3 errors where they left out a section.
Don't make the corrections that no charge won't be, since they made the error.
I would think so. You never know, but I would think so.
And then we've got to add the one
The news,
about the parking down there. Now,
we have several we have to add since we haven't codified originally.
I don't know, probably in charge, but no one's in charge for that.
But we did have budget because we knew that was coming.
Yeah, good.
I think that's all.
That's your, okay, now we're up to new business. I guess that's.
Website update, the video portion will be ready to go tomorrow, and we've gone with YouTube with that. So as soon as I get tonight's uploaded, I can put the link in Judy's illegal Facebook group. And again, our site is not official either, and there is a disclaimer on it that says that it's not official. it will be up and running, that piece of it will be up and running tomorrow. The rest of it we've hit a snag, but I've got somebody that's IT that's helping me on it, and we should have that piece of it up by the end of the month. And that will be the piece that if the ordinances ever do get codified, there'll be a link from that page to the Google Dropbox where all the ordinances are, so everybody can look up the ordinances and get an idea of what is in ordinance and what is not in ordinance. And that's the update on the website.
What is this website name?
What?
The site name? Do you have a name for it?
It's varnamtowninfo.com, but it's not active right now, so if you type that in, it actually shouldn't show up anything right now.
I'm just writing it down on my notes. Varnamtown Info?
And if you go to YouTube and search Varnamtown information, it actually should pull the page up now. When I did search on it this afternoon on the YouTube part, it came up.
Okay. Any other
I
new business?
had a complaint that people are fishing off the dock, the walkway down there by the boat ramp. And they said they shouldn't do it. I said, well, I'll tell them. And so I don't want you to put a sign up there fishing, is there one up there on that
I
dock?
thought there was some new fishing sign up.
Said it's dangerous when boats come in, you know, when the boats are loaded up and things like fishing, and I've had complaints said.
I don't know what that sign says on there, I can't remember.
There's one of them says, no bicycles or golf carts or
Skateboard.
skating boards or whatever,
Right.
but I don't know about the no fishing.
But who's gonna enforce that? I mean, you put I'm not gonna be there, I'm just saying.
It keep those people off of there. Anybody else gonna do it anyway?
Golf carts right down there.
Are they gonna tear it up?
If we ever get that T put on there, they can fish off of the T.
Yeah.
And that'll get them away from the boats.
Somebody complained, you know.
Any other new business? Okay, I guess it's me again, on new business. I did meet with the county on 8/19, the planning and zoning, code enforcement, solid waste. Remember we were talking about the solid waste cleanup? And so there was like 7 municipalities we're talking about participating. They're trying to draw up a contract and let us know how much it would cost if we participated in that solid waste enforcement. I also noticed down there by where Tony lives, they really cleaned that place up.
We
Oh,
noticed
yeah.
too.
They pulled that old boat out and
Yeah.
everything, it really looks good.
Yeah.
I also mentioned something about that house that had all those dogs,
Yeah.
those 14 dogs. So I'm waiting to hear from them again, so, and like I said, there's 7 other municipalities that are interested in this. And we will share in the cost. Okay.
I have a concern about that. Across the street from my house, I have a building that is sitting on top of boards that I worry about when a hurricane comes through, because that debris is gonna fly to my house. Brings my property value down. So how long is it gonna take for us to get something in line, to be able to get something enforced for people, not to be able to do those types of hazards?
And see, what, you know, when I was talking with them, what we could do, I mean, we can write them a letter from the town and say, look, this is what's happening. We give you so many days, you know, try to clean it up. If they don't do it, then we'll put a little more pressure on them. Then if they don't adhere, that's when we will bring the county in and let them take care of it for us. We don't want to be that bad on our citizens, but yet we want to beautify it a little bit.
Is that something that we're doing now, or is that something that you're talking about doing?
We're waiting to hear from the planning, and they're supposed to try to get a contract together for the other 7 municipalities that don't have this.
Okay.
So hopefully I'll be able to know something next week.
The way the county is now, it's, if you got your junk behind the fence where it's not visible to your neighbors and people passing, they don't bother. But if it's where it's visible, or if it's causing a rodent problem or something like that, then that's when the county, comes in. But they're gonna do up another contract, so we'll wait and see what their details are.
That's not what your situation is, though, is it?
Every time you ride by, the whole door is open, you can see everything.
It's up on blocks.
It's terrible.
It's awful.
What is it on blocks? I couldn't
It's
understand.
like a building.
Foils on it,
It's a
don't have.
storage building, they pulled up a storage building, it's like 3 feet off the road, the
Yeah,
whole
and
door's open, you
it's-
see everything in there.
It's that high off the ground, and it's just
It's
sitting
awful.
on wood, it's back on House Beach, so they're north corner. Right across the street, I live right here, just right across the street.
On that junk.
Hoyle O'Neill's old house, right?
How big is that utility?
That building is,
I'm not good on
At
signs.
least
it's bigger than mine, it's bigger than mine, mine's 8 by 10, and it's bigger than mine.
And it's bigger, and they're about 16 million to bring that in.
Yes,
It's like a 12 by 16.
It's awful.
That needs to be changed, because,
We
if
had
it's
a Clark
over,
County problem here, and she can't think.
When people are speaking, I can't take minutes, that's why we have a public comment section. So that's why there was no comments specified during the public hearing, because there was just people talking over people. Y'all have to speak during public comment if it wants to be recorded.
when I was just, back to this shed over here, whatever that building is, if it's over 10 feet, they're supposed to have a permit to bring it in. And,
I think it's bigger than 10 feet.
Oh, yeah.
and then we can get, Mark to check and see where it sits in proximity of the property lines.
Because you got to have that, offset. So this is what we're doing with that plan, and, hopefully we have the ball rolling.
Thank you.
I believe that finishes my report tonight. Committee reports.
Did you ask for one? I thought you already asked for committee reports.
That was all business.
That was all business, okay.
We need all put together so that when it
Okay, clerk and director's report again.
I've already given out my report in the first time. All my stuff's been already reported.
Okay. Public comments.
I have one.
Okay.
I have a question, and I don't know who will be the one to answer it, but it has to do with RVs, campers being parked down in Barntown. I know pretty much what the, ordinance for the county is, but when you talk to them, they say, I gotta go to Barntown. So I'm just curious, is there a separate ordinance that y'all have for RV campers being parked on people's property and then living in it full time?
Yeah, we do have it.
Is it the same, is it different than the counties?
Our ordinance, you can't set up anything for a residence to be lived in that's less than a single wide.
Okay.
You can't set, if you've got campers, they're not supposed to be hooked up for living in.
Okay, so if you have one, who do you report to get something done about it? I've had one sitting across from me for quite a bit of time now, and I think even the county knows, and the man's even added something to it to make it permanent. And there's a house across the street that belongs to his family, but his camper is separate on this piece
piece of
We
land.
can get the inspection officer down.
It's the one that was moved from
Yes,
Louis land down there.
yes, ma'am.
When y'all got after them, they moved it, that man took it and moved it up there.
Yes, his brother passed
So
away.
is that there near, Jenny and Ruby?
It's right, yes, it is, right down that time.
Yeah.
It's been there.
Yeah, yeah.
Ever since they moved it, we got those letters. He's the only one that moved theirs, I think.
Didn't somebody go see him and he run him off the property? I
Yeah.
thought somebody went to see him and they run him off.
It
They
was,
threatened him.
Yeah.
I'm still there.
Yes.
But they threatened the, our enforcement officer.
yeah, sure
Yeah.
is, but we can, he can get a deputy to go with him.
Yeah, because that man on
He
the road.
is got, it's been permanent, he's had I know after the hurricane, he had to put a blue tarp over it, but he's added some kind of, it just hurts the property value when you have something, and when you know the county is like that, I'm trying to deal with it, but it really is an issue without going.
Cause I believe, that they, said that he should be reported to the parole officer, and we need the person who owns the property that's allowing that.
Yeah, they live in Belleville, I think.
I'll see if I can get the,
This
inspection
past
officer
weekend, they
down.
had another camper up there, but they, pulled it, they left with that one, and that's when I finally just said, that's enough. When do you stop? Next thing I know, they'll have another one up there permanently, and this one I try to just let it be, but
Has
I
one
don't think it's
inspected
right.
that?
No, Eddie Van Vliet
Yeah.
went up there, and that's where he threatened him. And he reported it, they said, reporting to the parole officer, but I don't know that that was actually done, I'm not sure. 'Cause
Well, I
it's
have
been a
seen
while.
cops up there a couple times, I don't know what for, I'm gonna have to ask them, but I have seen them up there a couple times.
You talking about the deputies?
Well, he's on the road, so I don't know.
I don't know.
It's a bad
He-
situation.
He's definitely staying there permanently.
Where's it at?
Where did he come from?
Down there in Lincoln. He's
I mean,
had
where-
it most days.
Where did he come from originally? Anybody know?
Prison?
Prison.
Yeah, that's true, Billy, you're right, that's true.
To send them a letter, and, we can start to charge them, it's, $50 a day, every day, a violation.
If you just let one go, then how can you not let somebody else do it? Somewhere you have to draw the line,
Right.
to somebody like that. If it was temporary, he'd come there, he was in hard times, and they let him stay for a month or two, but now it's been almost a year, and it's just time.
And see, then the pandemic, was we had another situation,
That's right.
same thing.
Yeah. with the
And
letters.
the pandemic hit, and so everything stopped.
It's not like that anymore, he needs to
No.
go to a campground or somewhere that's
We'll have
set
to
up for
look
that.
into it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I do wanna say one other thing, I listened to y'all talk about that money, and I know it's probably a lot of time consuming, but, listen about the speakers and all that, and that, I would think, could be used for the COVID related, along with your panels, all of that, and plus this, what was it, the other thing that y'all were talking about, getting your, internet, your website, that could be COVID related, to get information out to people. Your Zoom stuff, anything you need for Zoom could be used for COVID related. All your masks and hand sanitizers, everything that y'all have like that is all COVID related. So there's a lot of other things that y'all could be looking at. They're small, I don't know that you'd use all that money, but you could use some of it for some of this COVID related.
And I think you said we had, 3 to 5 years to use it?
Yes, you've got a long time to look at that, so, there's a lot of things that you could use that towards.
And what we have to the 15th, 11th,
Wednesday.
COVID testing, there's a lot of these shrimp boats, come in and stuff, they don't have access to COVID testing and stuff like
You
that.
can help pay.
You could, have a COVID testing clinic out here at the town hall so that it's accessible for people in our community.
That was just my thought.
Well, they've got the home testing kits now.
Yeah, I'm saying that.
Well, it isn't on the,
They offer.
it isn't on the agenda to vote on tonight. So, but we got to make up our minds on what we're gonna do.
You got to think about, like Shalom, back out, you have to have an account just for that, and it's
I'll talk to the mayor's load tomorrow, Walt.
Yeah.
And see, because I think some other towns were getting together at the other mayors in Charlotte with him.
Let him talk to the manager. The manager said he might talk to her.
Any more public comments?
I have one more, I'm sorry. What is y'all's ordinance on, say if your neighbors have trees that are coming over your property and posing a potential hazard, like to fall over into your property and create a hazard on your property? Do you have an ordinance for, like, the way that you guys do your bushes and stuff like that and people's trees? I mean, you're responsible for your own trees on your property, but if they're over and it's creating a hazard to someone else's property, is there something that's in the ordinance for things like that?
Can't you cut, aren't you
I don't
got all
think
the
we
way
You
up?
can cut what's on, overhang on your side, you can do that.
Yeah.
But in my situation, you cannot do that.
But if it's overhanging on your property,
Yeah, that's easier said than done.
But I would try to work it out with the neighbor, and you have to be careful how you trim it, that you don't damage the tree. But, yeah, but overhanging the property line, you can cut it.
Just go,
But we don't have an ordinance that.
That might be something we need to think about there.
yeah, we don't have no ordinance for that.
any more public comments?
Whatever we can.
I mean,
Do I hear a motion?
To adjourn.
Adjourn. All in favor?
Ah.
We're adjourned. I'm tired.